I'm Julie Zenner along with Dennis Anderson, and here's what's coming up on Almanac North.
Well, it's been a rather eventful week for the City of Duluth, with two legal cases turning out favorably for the city. Mayor Don Ness is here tonight to talk about the week that was.
Wolf experts from around the world are gathered in Duluth this weekend, sharing the latest research and talking about the evolving relationship between man and animal.
And from the news file, 25 years ago, Douglas County threw its hat in the ring for a dog track.
These stories and more coming up next on Almanac North. Hello and welcome to Almanac North. Thanks for watching. Denny, it was a very eventful week in the region and great weather as well.
Well, there's been a lot in the news. We're going to cover again some of that, go more in depth with it. And yeah, we had a wonderful week. Nothing but sunshine and temperatures low 70s.
Yeah, you got a little bit of color this week.
Got a little suntan.
It's looking good.
All right.
A lot to talk about, so let's get started.
Thank you very much, Julie. Well, two court rulings this week couldn't have turned out much better as far as the City of Duluth is concerned. A jury in Minneapolis Monday convicted Last Place on Earth owner Jim Carlson on 51 federal charges related to the sale of synthetic drugs at his downtown Duluth business. And then on Tuesday, a district court judge ruled the Fond du Lac Band has to pay the city more than $10 million in back pay from its Fond Duluth casino revenues. And that was just the beginning of an eventful week for Duluth Mayor Don Ness, who joins us now to talk about all this and more. Mayor Ness, thank you very much for being here. And we've heard now, too, that Joe Gomer has passed away. And, of course, everybody will remember Joe from being one of the Tuskegee Airmen. Any reflections on Joe?
Well, he was just such a wonderful man, a national hero in many respects, served his country so proudly, and it was an important part of American history, and the Tuskegee Airmen and what they did in World War II, and the importance of almost shifting how Americans saw African American service in the military. And he was just such a warm man. You know, I saw him, I got to know Joe down at the YMCA, and just always had a smile on his face and a good story to tell. And, you know, while it's a tragic day for his family and our community, I'm so glad that we were able to honor him with the statue at the new airport, and that he got the recognition that he deserves.
93 years old.
Amazing, yeah.
All right, well, let's get into the news of the week. The verdict in the federal trial of Last Place on Earth owner Jim Carlson and all of his cohorts. Were you confident going in that there was going to be a conviction on most of those counts?
Well, you know, I mean, we're confident on the negative impact that Jim Carlson has had, not only on our community and the business district, but on families and individuals whose lives were ruined because of the sale and the consumption of this product. And but going into a jury trial and a criminal trial, you know, there's all sorts of variables, and you know, clearly his lawyers were trying to bring confusion into the case, make the question the facts of the matter, but the jury saw through that and sought to convict. And you know, for us, it's the removal of that harm that he was doing from the community. That's really the most important thing.
Who needs to take the ball and run with it, the state legislature or city councils, to prevent other such establishments from forming?
Well, clearly, you know, the higher the level and the more comprehensive the law, the stronger the case will be. And both the federal government and the state legislature have passed laws, but they've had kind of some of these loopholes in there. And so I think there's a movement on both the federal and state level. Our Eric Simonson here in Duluth is been a leader on the effort to strengthen the laws in the state of Minnesota. And we can do our part in the city of Duluth as well, but ultimately, if you have strong and consistent state and federal laws, that's the best approach.
Does a possible appeal worry you?
Well, I mean, certainly it does worry you because there's an unknown, there's an uncertainty there. But you know, given the strength of the conviction, the number of counts that that he was found guilty of, we're very hopeful that this will stick.
Now, if it does stick, does that mean that the Last Place on Earth is closed permanently, or could there be opportunities for his friends, his family members, to reopen it or relocate it somewhere?
Well, that's an unknown, and part of it's really in the hands of the federal prosecutors and the judge to determine what happens with that property and his assets. Personally, while I may not like it, I don't think that there's a problem with having that type of shop in the city of Duluth, as long as they're not selling synthetic drugs. The other products on there, they might be annoying, or people can have their different opinions about that, but it was the drugs that were harming people's lives. They were the drugs that had folks show up in the emergency room with doctors that didn't know how to treat these patients.
So what impact then does Jim Carlson leave on Duluth?
Well, I think it's a sad legacy. That it was really, in my mind, it was his greed that saw him really put a lot of people's lives at risk, and really preying on some vulnerable people in our community, and like the neck tattoo stories, and pushing this product that he was claiming was a legal alternative, when the devastation that the consumption of his product was having on these people, and he just didn't take accountability for those actions and the effect that he was having on this community.
Do you think that the conviction will have a broader impact on other communities that are battling similar situations with synthetic drugs?
Well, clearly Duluth was on the front end of this nationally. We were the first major test, in part because Jim Carlson was fighting it every step of the way, and he wanted that attention. He brought that attention to himself, and now I think there is that pathway both on what you can do at a local level using our nuisance ordinance and charges, as well as the partnership that we had with the federal prosecutors to strengthen their case and ultimately end in conviction.
Mayor, he was found guilty on multiple federal charges. Is the city going to move ahead and continue to pursue city charges?
Well, our charges were the nuisance charges, and that was what has shut the Last Place on Earth down for the last
couple of months.
And so we will certainly continue that. It might be a moot point at this point because he, presumably won't be operating out of that store anytime soon, and so we'll continue with that, but hopefully it won't matter.
So right on the heels of this good news from the courts, you get other good news from the courts this week, with the U.S. District Court ruling that the Fond du Lac Band owes the city some back casino payments of about, what, $10.4 million or so?
Right. So this was in the fall of 2009. The band sent a letter to the city saying we're no longer going to make the payments for the revenue share that had been put in place in 1994. And so this case was about the disputed period of time from the moment that they sent that letter and stopped payment until the end of the first term of the contract, which ran through April of 2011. So there's about a 2-year period of time, and that was, based on their records, about a $10 million chunk of money that would have come to the city if they would have honored the contract to the end of the first term. Then there's an additional $2 million that take two forms. One is interest on the money that they have held, which is defined in the contract that they have to pay interest if they're withholding those dollars. And then the second is kind of a complicated accounting decision on contra revenue, which is kind of based on their operations, how they're handing out coupons for their slot machines. So that's about a $500,000 question that will now go to trial. The judge will then determine whether or not that $500,000 will be part of this larger settlement, and then those dollars should come to the city of Duluth.
If you do indeed get the money, is that money going to be earmarked for roads?
It's certainly going to be in our street program. We moved to a pay-as-you-go system, so we're not incurring any new street improvement debt. However, we still have street improvement debt outstanding, and so what we'd like to do is use the dollars from the band to pay down that existing street debt, so that when we're generating new dollars for street reconstruction, they can go to construction rather than going to pay old debt.
Where are things in terms of just the relationship between the city and the band? since this ruling came, have you been in contact with them? Are you starting to negotiate on some of these other issues?
I think that's the most tragic part of this whole deal. You know, when they sent that letter and stopped payment, it created conflict between our communities. And this is a very important relationship between the Fond du Lac Band and the City of Duluth. We're neighbors in many sense of the words. We have been partners, business partners in the creation of this casino in downtown Duluth, and had mutually benefited from this. And so to see, you know, this conflict and this contractual disagreement kind of divide our communities has been really, really sad. So we have reached out this week and once again opened up the prospect of sitting down and trying to find a compromise. There's so much room for compromise and so much ability for us to get on the same page, find an agreement that's mutually beneficial for both communities, and then put this in the past and make their operations in downtown Duluth as successful as possible.
Contractually, is the casino obligated to stay in Duluth for several more years, or could they pack up their bags and go to Hermantown?
Oh, they could certainly, well, they have to establish a casino on tribal land.
That's right.
And so, and that's the reason why this agreement was so important. They have a casino in the middle of our downtown waterfront district that brings 3.5 million visitors into our town and in the population center. So that's the value that they've gotten out of this. They certainly could shut down tomorrow, but this casino is very successful for them. They bring in a tremendous amount of revenue from this.
You don't think
this
they would
casino.
want to do that?
They wouldn't want to do that, no.
I understand you are getting a new Director of Public Administration, a name that many people will be familiar with.
Yeah, Jim Philby Williams, and I am just absolutely thrilled that when we talked to him and he had an interest in coming on board. Many people will remember Jim was the person who ran Animal Allies at the time that they were building their new facility, and he's a very sharp person, very intelligent. And is going to bring a lot of value to the city.
Good.
Mayor, you posted an interesting photo on Facebook this week that we just have to show. If mayors ruled the world, now higher aspirations politically, I have to ask.
No, well, you know, the fun thing, all right, take that picture down. Take it down. You know, the interesting thing about that book, and it's very timely because of what we're seeing in Washington right now. The idea is that it's mayors who are solution-minded, that we see a problem, we develop a solution, and we implement it. And that's how public service is supposed to work. But what we see in Washington, and unfortunately we are also seeing more and more at the state level, is a lot of finger pointing, a lot of spin, people kind of trying to play the politics and looking to the next election rather than just finding solutions to our nation's and our state's problems. And so that's the gist of that book, and we had a little fun with it.
Well, thanks for being a good sport.
Been a tough couple of weeks for politicians in America, with the government shutdown, partial shutdown.
It has. You know,
Your reaction?
I saw that Congress has a approval rating of 5%, and I wonder who those 5% are that says that Congress is doing a good job.
I don't know.
Well, I'm thinking mayors ought to rule the world.
All right, well, I'm with you.
All right, Mayor Don Ness, thank you very much.
All right, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Now, let's dig into our news file archive for a look at what was making news 25 years ago this week.
Contenders for Wisconsin's first dog racing track are lining up behind the starting gates, and Douglas County has just joined the pack. Results are in from a study commissioned several months ago, and it shows that a racetrack in Superior or rural Douglas County would be a winner. Now, city and county officials will try to convince the State Gambling Commission that Douglas County should be one of the sites licensed for a track.
We want to be up front. We want to be on board. We've got to find a developer by that time, and I think it would be tremendous if we could be one of the 5 sites designated in the state of Wisconsin.
Because of Douglas County's location, the study estimates that almost 2,000 people from Wisconsin, Minnesota, Michigan, and Canada would attend the track's performances. The search is beginning for private developers who want to spend $6 to $8 million to build a track here. Nothing's definite, but it's beginning to look as though greyhound racing in Douglas County is a pretty sure bet. In Superior, Carla Powers, KDLH News.
Wolf experts from around the world are gathering in Duluth this weekend for an international wolf symposium. The theme of the event is Wolves and Humans at a Crossroads, an appropriate title considering the recent developments in our region. Following delisting of the wolf from the endangered species list, both Minnesota and Wisconsin have sanctioned wolf hunting and trapping seasons. Joining us now with more on the symposium is Nancy Gibson, founding board member of the International Wolf Center in Ely, and Rob Schultz is the executive director of the International Wolf Center. And thanks to both of you for taking some time away from the symposium to come over and talk to us. And Nancy, it seems as though the wolf is more polarizing than ever.
Well, and just listen to your mayor talking about the different factions and trying to come to solutions. I think that is really the role that we are trying to do at the International Wolf Center. And so many groups tell you what to think. We're trying to help people, teach them how to think and how to deal with the conflicts they see in the field, use the science to come up with some ideas, but we have to be persuasive in our language. So we have to really turn to education.
Rob,
as
this
well.
is an international symposium, and not only people from the United States, but a number of countries. What do you hope to accomplish through this?
You know, our goal is really to get people coming together, talking about issues, being able to understand what's happening out there. So many people from around the world are interested in what's happening here in the United States right now with the delisting of the wolf. And at the same time, people within the United States are trying to figure out what's next. And so our discussions this weekend really focus around those issues and helping people think through them and try and plot out and figure out where we go next. We've had this successful return of the wolf in so many parts of the U.S., and now being that it's off the list, we have to know where to go.
Can the two of you give us an idea as to how many wolves there are, for example, in Minnesota, other states, and perhaps the rest of the world?
Well, I can't help you on the whole world, but I can tell you in Minnesota, there's about 2,200 wolves. And in the northern Rocky regions of Montana, Idaho, and Wyoming, there's about 1,200 wolves. And then you move over to Wisconsin, they have about 850, 900 wolves, and then about half that in Michigan.
Okay.
And they head out into the Dakotas from time to time, but Alaska has a very healthy population.
And there are wolves overseas.
Oh, all over. People don't think there are wolves in Saudi Arabia, but there are. That's the smallest subspecies of wolves. And the largest one is up in Canada.
Who comes to a symposium like the one that you're having, and do you find that a lot of diverse opinions are there, or are people pretty much of the same mind about wolves as you talk to people?
A lot of diversity. First of all, with all the different countries represented and all the different states, about 35 different states, people are there as well. You get people, and a lot of the public is there because they just want more information, but there's a lot. We had great panel discussion this morning about how do you define wolf recovery. How is the Endangered Species Act working with wolves and other species? So you get a wide variety of people even disagreeing about if the Endangered Species Act is working or not acting, or working well. So that's what's really good. We bring all these things to the forefront.
Yeah. Rob, how do you feel a wolf hunting season impacts the state, impacts the work you're doing, for example?
Well, we hear a lot of people asking questions about it. Obviously, in the last year, it's been very controversial.
Sure.
At the same time, I think what's really happened is it's also generated a real fascination in wolves. We've seen people become very interested in them. oftentimes it's important to remember that when a controversy like this erupts, people oftentimes become aware of issues that they weren't previously aware of. So the upside is that a lot of new people are interested in the wolf. They're very intrigued and trying to learn more about the wolf. But we're also seeing kind of the downside of that. People want to have an experience where they go into the wilderness and they see a wolf, or they go out and can photograph the wolf. And that's not easy. Wolves naturally do not want to be around humans. They'll typically be deeper into the woods. And so there's a real interest, and that's why we're seeing in places like Brimson so many people flocking there, wanting to see the wolf pups or wanting to come in contact with the wolf. And most Americans never have that experience. We're lucky here in the Arrowhead region because there are a lot of wolves, but in most parts of the United States, most people will never ever see a wolf in the wild. So,
now, has the Wolf Center actually taken a position on the hunting and trapping season after looking at the populations and what's going on?
We do take a very strong position on being an advocate of wolf education. And we
Not
will-
hunting?
No, and
Or
because
not
you know,
hunting.
if we got involved in every controversy, we would just be paying lawyers, and we wouldn't be educating. And that is a real important difference because we are concerned about the long-term sustainability of wolf populations. And the way to do that is through education. It's not the flashy, we hate wolves, we love wolves. It's let's learn about wolves. And it's worked.
Are other states using the Wolf Center as perhaps a resource for themselves?
Absolutely.
Talk about that a little bit if you can.
we work with a lot of schools throughout Canada, Mexico, and the United States. We do programs that are video conference to all of these different states. And what ends up happening, the other side too, the reason why we don't take that stand is if we were an advocacy-based organization, we wouldn't get into many of those schools. So we're constantly reaching out. We're sending wolf discovery kits to other states where teachers can utilize our materials to teach their students. And the amazing thing too is our website has a tremendous following. We have close to 2 million people a year come to the Wolf Center's website. They're interested in looking up information about wolves, going onto our webcams, trying to really discover the magic behind what we do through our website.
And if we make an in-person visit to the Wolf Center, what do we see?
Well, you'll see 7 wonderful ambassador wolves. You'll see 4 of them live, and then we have 3 retired wolves. But we've got a wonderful theater. We have wonderful programs. We have a great children's room. You can compare yourself on what you eat and what a wolf eats in a day. And so there are just some wonderful experiences. But we're in the middle of wolf country, and we're in the middle of where wolf research has happened. And so your chances of seeing a wolf are a little bit better than they are in Duluth. However, you can go out. We do howling trips. We take people out and show them wolf sign. And so it's really great. And I think because of the reputation of the International Wolf Center, that's why we can have a conference.
Are you open year-round?
We are open year-round, yes.
Now, you were involved since the very beginning
From the
of
very
the Wolf
beginning.
Center. Has the focus changed at all over the years, or has it become what the early founders envisioned it to be?
Well, our founders, I've always wanted to do wolf education, and we have really stuck to doing that. What has changed is as the wolf has no longer on the endangered species list, you have to start then changing about the wolf, and then we're getting into ecosystems and wildlands now, because that is really where the future of the wolf lies. So the conversation has changed from that perspective.
We should add too, a lot of people are interested in the wolf hunt, but really when we look at the species, the loss of habitat is one of the greatest threats. When we look at how much habitat is being lost here in Minnesota and other places, that's really what will be the long-term risk to the population.
Rob, where do we find the best habitat still existing to support a wolf population in Minnesota?
The Arrowhead region is perfect. Whenever we have very dense forests, those are places where wolves naturally like to live. We'll typically see them go down to about sandstone, and then there's a diagonal that goes up the side of the state, but they're really in the northeastern portion of the state.
So you've got 500 or so people here for
Best
the
ever.
symposium. If
Yeah.
there's one thing that you would want the people who are here to leave with, what would it be?
Well, I think it'd be hope. I mean, I think we really need to think about how we can work together, and I think we can. And I also think that we all leave with a conviction to make sure we conserve land for wolves.
Well, Nancy and Rob, thank you very much
you.
for coming
Thank
and
you.
talking
Thank
about
you.
this and for
Appreciate
the work
your
that
visit.
you're doing for the wolf. It's
Thank
an
you.
animal that's very important here in our
Yes.
region.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
It's time for a look at the week's top business stories from Business North. During the last decade, the forest products industry has suffered more than its fair share of economic woes. Yet, despite closures and downsizing, some believe that forest products industries are not only viable, they may even have a bright future. That's the message that President Jeff Howe of nonprofit Dovetail Partners, Inc. delivered to the Grand Rapids Area Chamber of Commerce at his monthly luncheon. Howe cited a number of developments that will drive the future: the use of wood in tall buildings, nanocellulose, biomass energy, thermally treated wood, and a projected rise in millennial spending.
A new statewide survey released this week indicates increased support for mining in Minnesota. 56% of voters surveyed favor expanding Minnesota's mining industry, with 48% supporting copper-nickel mining specifically. Only 22% of voters oppose copper-nickel mining, while about a third of voters don't know enough about it to say one way or the other. The survey was conducted by Global Strategy Group and commissioned by Jobs for Minnesotans.
Competing against magazines from across the United States and Canada, Lake Superior Magazine received a gold award from the International Regional Magazine Association. The award was presented for the year's best environmental feature story, which appeared in the magazine in a 2012 issue. The feature, Wild About Weather, written by editor Connie LeMay, was part of the magazine's annual State of the Lake report to its readers. For more on these and other stories, visit businessnorth.com.
And if you have a comment on tonight's show, please give us a call. Dial 218-788-2849 to leave a message, or send an email to almanacnorth@wdse.org. Of course, you can also visit the WDSE website for the latest news and information about the station, updates on programming, public meetings, and more. And Denny, it looks like we're getting into a busy time of year for news. So,
There is never a dull moment around here. Elections are coming up too, so there'll be a lot to talk about over the ensuing weeks.
That's right. So keep your eyes on Almanac North. For Denny and the crew here at Almanac North, I'm Julie Zenner. Have a great weekend, everyone.